In the city of Mithila, King Videha heard about the wisdom of Mahosadha, the Enlightenment Being. Jealous of Mahosadha's knowledge, the king's four ministers stopped him from inviting Mahosadha to the palace. However, the king, intrigued by what he had heard, decided to visit Mahosadha in secret. During his journey, the king's horse broke its leg, forcing him to return home. When the ministers learned of the king's failed journey, they told him, "We warned you not to go. See what happened?" Later, the king again expressed his desire to invite Mahosadha. The ministers, knowing they couldn't stop him this time, suggested the king send a message to Mahosadha asking for a noble horse, or an even nobler one. The ministers hoped to confuse Mahosadha with the strange request. Mahosadha understood the hidden meaning of the message and instructed his father to visit the king first. Mahosadha's father arrived at the palace and greeted the king, informing him that his son would come later. While they spoke, Mahosadha, dressed magnificently and accompanied by many followers, made his way toward the palace. On his way, he spotted a young donkey and ordered his men to bring it quietly to the palace without anyone noticing. As Mahosadha entered the city, crowds gathered in admiration, praising his intelligence and presence, marveling at his reputation for solving difficult puzzles. Mahosadha, the Enlightenment Being, arrived at the palace gate and sent a message announcing his arrival. The king, excited, invited him in. Mahosadha greeted the king and stood aside, waiting. The king, pleased, welcomed him and offered him a seat. Mahosadha then glanced at his father, and his father stood up, offering his seat to Mahosadha. Mahosadha sat in his father's seat. Seeing this, the king's four ministers and other wise men began to laugh, mocking Mahosadha for taking his father's seat, claiming he wasn't as wise as people said. The king, confused and disappointed, fell silent. Mahosadha noticed this and asked why the king was upset. The king replied, "I was happy when I heard of your wisdom, but now I'm disappointed because you took your father's seat." Mahosadha responded by asking, "Do you believe fathers are always more noble than sons?" The king said, "Yes." At that moment, Mahosadha called for the donkey he had brought and placed it before the king. He asked, "What is the value of this donkey?" The king replied, "Around 8 gold coins." Then Mahosadha asked, "What is the value of a noble horse born from a mare impregnated by this donkey?" The king answered, "That horse would be priceless." Mahosadha then pointed out, "You say fathers are always nobler than sons, but by your own words, this donkey would be worth more than the noble horse. Isn't that a contradiction?" He further challenged the king's erudites, saying they didn't even understand this simple concept, despite laughing at him. Finally, Mahosadha told the king, "If fathers are always nobler, take my father into your service. But if sons can be nobler, then take me." The king was delighted, and everyone applauded Mahosadha's clever solution to the riddle. The four erudite ministers, embarrassed by their defeat, remained silent. The moral: wisdom can change the perception of what is noble.